Very seldom do you find journal entries of like personal reflections of rabbis on their inner world. But we have, from his works, he wrote all these journals. Recently, someone culled from within those journals the personal entries that he had about himself. So I went into that book, I culled from there a few of them, and I put them here and I translated them to English. So I just want to kind of just show you a little bit about what Rabbi Kook had to say about his own soul. So it's interesting. It's like interesting to try to think about what he's trying to understand himself. Like all of us are trying to understand ourselves, but it's a little different when you have this like amazing soul. You don't know. You're trying to figure out what to do with it. So here's the first source. So I separated into 5 different parts here. First part is he's a reflective soul. So this is an entry on page 42 of that book. The book is called Hadarav. It's in Hebrew. Okay, and it's not enough that others don't know me, but I myself do not even know myself. So first off, he's trying to get to know himself. That's pretty neat. I have to struggle mightily against myself to sustain my inner faith in the grandeur of my soul. This grandeur is unrelated to actions. The soul is grand within itself due to its skula. And all of the learning in mitzvot only revealed to the soul a small fraction of its value. So something interesting here where he's kind of struggling he's battling with, I guess, feelings of inadequacy, saying, I have to really believe in the grandeur of my soul. Because sometimes he might have been doubting it. And so he's trying to understand. And he's searching deeper and deeper and saying, he's trying to discover the soul and just to kind of like, and try to believe in himself. So it's first I was like the fact that he's searching and the fact that he's trying to like work on believing in himself. I think that's something that kind of we can connect to ourselves. But we're going to see what does he reveal when he tries to reflect on his soul. So the first thing is an expansive soul. And I really like this piece. He says like this: expanses, expanses, divine expanses my soul craves. This is what, some of us, we crave ice cream, crave Netflix, This is what he's craving. Expanses. He's always looking for something like bigger. He always feels confined wherever he is. That was Rabbi Kook's struggle. And it's not just in being involved with interpersonal connections. It was when he was studying Jewish law, even when he was studying spiritual stuff in Judaism, there was something about that confined him. And he was seeking out expanses. That's what he says here. Divine expanses my soul craves. Don't enclose me in a cage, be it physical or spiritual. In heavenly expanses my soul soars. The walls of the heart cannot contain it, the soul, neither the walls of action, musar, logic, or social courtesies. Above all of these, she soars and flies. His soul is like flying. That's his experience, his daily experience. He has to contain this when he's dealing with people. Anything with a name, beyond all, flies above anything with a name, beyond all pleasure, all pleasantness and beauty, beyond all things sublime and exalted. I am lovesick. This is his daily experience. He's walking around lovesick, and he's involved even with all these spiritual things, but they even feel like they confine him. And so when he has his moments where he can give that freedom to that expansion of his soul, he kind of looks forward to that. You see that sometimes in his letters too. He's like, I haven't had time because I've been so busy, but really I would like to be involved with these more lofty matters. That's just another aspect. Here's another aspect. So he knew a lot. Obviously, he was a big scholar, but when he was looking for a revelation, he wouldn't go too. He didn't have to go too far. He just had to kind of tune into his soul. He was able to get revelation from his soul. Not all the time, I'm sure, but at times he was able to hear from his soul messages. This is kind of him reflecting on his revelations from his soul. And I will listen and I will hear from the depths of my soul, from the emotions of my heart, the call of the voice of Hashem. And I will dread an immense dread. So there's certain parts where he writes in certain places where he's overwhelmed and kind of afraid even the fact that he's hearing these things. He says, what am I, a false prophet? I'm hearing these things? So he's that's kind of something that he was dealing with too. The second piece here, my heart is in anguish over all the sublime thoughts that are hidden deep inside the heart that I do not bring forth from potential into actuality. Because these are precious gems from the treasure chest of the soul that rise high above all forms of innovation and philosophizing, fruits of intellectual labor or the exertion of one's thought. So he's saying that I could be thinking all day about deep ideas, but really he was upset or he was upset over the fact that he had all these gems in his soul that he wasn't able to uncover underneath all the other thoughts and all the things daily things he was involved in, because he was also involved in politics, fundraising and stuff like that as a rabbi. And so he had all these gems of his soul, and he just felt bad that they're sitting there waiting for him to discover them. That's a pretty neat thing. You have all this Torah just inside you, and just you feel bad that you can't expose it. That's another one of his struggles. So here's another one where he's reflecting on himself, and Rabbi Kook, when you read his writings, it's all over the place. He'll quote you poetry, he'll quote you mysticism, and then Talmud, and then so he basically, and when he kind of thought about himself, he's trying to figure out like what's going on with me. Am I a mystic, or am I a rationalist? Am I a philosopher? Am I an academic? Am I a poet? And then at a certain point, when he realized all this stuff was going on, he didn't know what to do with it. He came to the conclusion: this is just who I am. I'm a torn soul. I have my hand in everything, and that's just the way it is. So this is kind of him reflecting on that here. I struggle very much to be involved solely in halachic matters or solely in matters of Agada, meaning Jewish lore, exclusively in matters of the revealed Torah or the concealed part of the Torah. Similarly, is it hard for me to be inclined solely to the path of simple faith or solely to the path of scientific investigation and logic, or exclusively to the trait of seclusion or exclusively to the trait of companionship and friendliness? Because all of the streams control me: faith and scientific investigation, nationalism and ethics, halakha and agadah, the revealed and the concealed part of Torah, criticism and poetry. So this is an individual who's walking around with all this stuff, kind of all these streams flowing inside of him, and he has to find all of them their place in his life. And he mentions something here about scientific inquiry and faith. In another place, he talks about that you have to have both of them. You have to, on one hand, you have to kind of constantly develop your mind and try to prove things to yourself. On the other hand, you have to strengthen your inner faith. And this could be connected to just his own inner world, where he's experiencing these things both in a very strong way. And also he writes a lot about like universalism and nationalism. On one hand, he was like big lover of Am Yisrael. On the other hand, he has writings about connecting to the whole world. And so like these are different streams that are flowing inside of him. He's trying to give them all expression in his writings. So it's in Israel, you have people who quote selected parts of his, or all over the world, scholars and rabbis quote selective things from his writings. Those are more nationalistic. They'll bring all of his nationalistic stuff. Academics quote more of his universalistic stuff. And you can find really a lot of stuff in his writings because really he was, as he said, he was like a torn soul. He was like all over, a lot of different things. So here's just the last thing on his soul itself, on how he viewed the world and like his love for everything. Because he talks about how you have to love, and at different places he talks about how you have to love everything. And but he talks about sources in the sages that say you have to hate sinners, for instance. He said that's a test, those sources, to see if you're really going to fall into the trap of hating people. He says you're only allowed to hate people. You're only allowed to hate the negative stuff that they're doing, but their inner essence, you have to always love them. He says it's a test that you might fall into that issue of hating people. He said I can't hate anything. He said I can't hate anything. There's nothing I love everything. And he says I might hate the negative aspects in them, but I love everything. And so you're going to see he reflects on that a little bit here. He says, I cannot distinguish between different entities in an absolute matter, but rather in a contiguous, gradated fashion. So when he looked at the world, he saw everything as interconnected because he was kind of like, he was a mystic. So he'd say like, I don't see like animals and humans or angels and all the spheres, they're interconnected in one way or another. And they're all in a continuum, in a spectrum. And so everything is like part of a whole, of a larger whole. And that's in general how he saw the world. And that could have contributed to his deep love for everything, because really everything is interconnected in one way or another. We all share common things, commonalities. And so it's not like we're, you and me and we're separate things. We're all one because we share common things. So you're going to see in this last piece here where he talks about his love, that could be stemming from that worldview, or also just from his like inner well springs of his soul. Because one of his parents was Hasidic, one of his parents was misnagid, meaning one of them was Hasidic, was about like love and song and prayer and like more emotional parts of the Torah, and his other parent was from like the Litvish yeshivas, which is like more intellectual and more like dry. And so he had both of those things going on inside of him also. But that love kind of like overflowed. So here's the last source here. I love all of creation, all the briot. So it's not just like Am Yisrael, it's the whole world, all of creations. Under no circumstances, meaning maybe he was doubting, sometimes he found like maybe he would fall prey to not feeling the love. He goes, under no circumstances, he's like strengthening himself. Will I change this internal trait of mine? People might doubt me that I'm loving everything, but I'm not going to change it. He's like reassuring himself almost. And I feel meritorious aspects, and I find meritorious aspects and the positive sides in everything mamash. So in every single thing, he was able to find a positive thing. And so this is, and it's interesting because in his time, when he was in Israel, there was is the first yeshuv, the first settlement, and there was a big debate amongst rabbis. How do you deal with the settlers, the non-religious settlers? Do you push them away, or do you draw them close? Because on one hand, they're building the land of Israel. On the other hand, they're not involved in Torah, not doing the Torah and the mitzvahs. And his view was, I'm going to love them. I'm going to spread love to them, and I'm going to bring them closer to the Torah and closer to closer. I'm going to just draw them close, no matter where they are. But there was a lot of rabbis were like against his way. So this could be connected to like this little doubt that he has here when he's saying, I will, under no circumstances will I change this internal trait of mine. Maybe he had like a thought, maybe I should change this. Maybe I'm going in the wrong. And he's reassuring himself, this is the path I'm going to go. This is the way I want to be, and this is who I am. So I think what's important about these like little excerpts is try to see like how a big rabbi is dealing with trying to understand his big soul. And I think and the fact that he took the time to kind of analyze and think about his soul, I think that's a good message for us in terms of trying to understand who we are and constantly do this constant reflection, try to figure out who we are and like what, maybe even get to deeper levels of our soul to understand what our soul's about.